Israel has carried out an airstrike targeting the leadership of Hamas in Qatar. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he ordered the strike, which took place on Tuesday afternoon in the Qatari capital Doha, where Hamas's exiled leadership is based. These pictures show the moment of the strike. Hamas says the group's top leaders survived the attack, but 5 lower-ranking members are dead, among them a son of Hamas's chief Khalil al-Hayya. Qatar has condemned the incident as a cowardly Israeli attack. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said the strike was a violation of Qatar's sovereignty. Well, let's explore this with DW's Middle East analyst, Shani Rozanes, who's with me here in the studio, and Hans-Jakob Schindler is Senior Director of the Counter-Extremism Project. Welcome both. Shani, let's start with you. Give us your assessment of the Israeli logic in attacking a country that is key to diplomatic efforts to ending the war in Gaza.
It's a shock factor. They wanted just to shake things up. Part of it is also they do it because they can, and they want to show the Arab world, and they want to show the world in general that they can. It's a part of building deterrence. But it's mostly for Hamas. It was about shaking up things and showing we are very much determined and we're going to do whatever it takes. If you thought you can harbor safely in Qatar, we're not going to let that happen. I think Netanyahu is quite desperate. He's trying to get an end to this war. He wants to see Hamas out. He wants to see Hamas on his knees. He cannot find, this is happening in the morning of Israel announcing it's advancing in Gaza, asking all population to evacuate from Gaza City. So Netanyahu, what he wanted from October 7th is a complete capitulation of Hamas, and he's showing today that he'll do whatever it takes to get there, even if it might jeopardize the hostages.
Hans-Jakob Schindler from the Counter-Extremism Project. Has this Israeli attack effectively ended the prospect of future negotiations with Hamas?
Look, I mean, if you target the chief negotiator of the other side, it's of course not furthering the possibility of negotiations. But Hamas is a terror organization who, at least in Gaza, fights for its continued existence. And therefore, I would assume after a while, they will not have a different opportunity than to go back to talks with the Israelis.
You think? And who will mediate those talks? Because I'm presuming the Qataris are quite angry about this.
Well, the Qataris are not just angry about this. According to Al Jazeera, one of their security personnel actually got killed. So a non-Hamas Qatari member of the Qatari security forces is dead now. And as far as I have read, Qatar has now officially withdrawn from its mediator role, as you would expect if you are attacked on your sovereign territory.
Shani.
Well, I think the Israelis are counting on immediate rage, but then logic and interest prevailing on the long term. They expect Qatar to be withdrawing right now. They also tried to make the distinction between we did not try to attack Qatar as much as we wanted to attack Hamas that happened to be on Qatari soil. This is, of course, a very artificial distinction. Nobody is buying that. But at the same time, Israel feels like eventually American pressure, the interests that have led Hamas so far to be the mediator, and the idea that there's no other way other than, of this war than to find some sort of a solution that will be eventually prevailing and will bring some sort of a solution, even if immediately everything seems to be like scorched earth and there's no way further.
But the scorched earth part of that is, as Hans-Jakob said, you're bombing and killing the very people with whom you are supposedly negotiating. This is not how you work out a deal, or is it?
Well, if you talk about Israeli logic, the way they talk about Hamas, the way they see Hamas is they talk about them as Nazis. And they say, imagine after World War II, the world would have let the Nazis stay in power in Germany. This is something we cannot tolerate. If we want to see Hamas out, we need to take all measures that are possible, including that. If we talk about, and it seems like the Americans are buying at least some of that, because if you look at the tweets that President Trump was giving in the last days, and his announcement, he says about it's going to be nasty, it's still my last warning, Hamas needs to be out, Hamas needs to accept this deal, and more than that, saying we need to remember October 7th, sort of trying to bring us back, falling in line with the Israeli logic on this and this attack.
Hans-Jakob, the Israeli line was always about getting the hostages back, destroying Hamas. This looks more like destroying Hamas and crossing your fingers that you can get some of the hostages back. Where does this leave those hostages who are still being held by Hamas?
Just to put on another detail on the point that Shani just mentioned, a few minutes ago, Caroline Levitt, the spokesperson of the White House, read out a written statement which was very remarkable for this and any other US administration. It first said the US military, not Israel, informed the president of an impending attack against Hamas in Doha, and that the president immediately asked Special Representative Witkoff to inform the Qataris. It also said that attacking a sovereign state like Qatar, that is the mediator, is not furthering Israel's position, while, of course, targeting Hamas leaders is a worthwhile cause. So you can see that the US administration is actually trying to put some distance between itself and the Israeli actions. Now, for the hostages, of course, justifiably, the hostage families are extremely worried. Now you have the political leadership and the financial leadership, because you had a meeting where one of the chief financial managers of Hamas was in Doha. You had Khaled Mishal there, you had the chief negotiator there. All, according to Hamas, have survived, although I would put a little bit of a question mark on what Hamas says at this point, who survived and who didn't survive. All of them were there. And so it's really tough to see that retribution is not taken by Hamas. I mean, Hamas, as we've clearly seen from the hostage videos in the last couple of weeks, including one video a day ago of a German citizen who is a hostage, has really no regard for the life of the hostages. The terror organization knows an alive hostage is, in brutal terms, worth more than a dead one, but they are absolutely capable and willing to execute hostages in retribution or before they get freed by the Israeli Defense Forces in Gaza. So this is, of course, a high-risk situation now for the last remaining living hostages, 7 of which are German citizens.
Right. Can we...
Yeah, just quickly about that.
Yeah.
I mean, Israel, I think, counts on the fact that this is not the first assassination Israel has executed on Hamas leaders in the last 2 years. They say so far this has not jeopardized the lives of the hostages. They feel or hope that this will be the case as well. Sort of like the more Hamas is backed into the corner, the more valuable the hostages get. So they have no interest in losing, in a way, these assets. That's one thing. One more thing interesting connecting to what Hans-Jakob was saying. We are hearing more and more reports now in Israeli media about the fact that this operation was far from being in consensus in Israeli leadership. There's a lot of voices among Israeli leadership, including in the military and different defense systems, saying we may have lost a chance with the negotiations. We should have pursued negotiation further before attacking Hamas leaders. It could be that this is a very grave mistake that Israel has made. These voices are starting to surface now in Israel.
So much to pick up on. I want to pick up on one of the things that Hans-Jakob said with you, Shani, this idea that the United States was either unwilling or unable to stop this attack. What does that tell us? Well,
I think Trump wants peace and he wants the situation to get unstuck in a way, but he also doesn't want, I think what Israel has managed to do is on one hand, it prides itself in being the bully, sort of like the crazy bully that you cannot expect. We have a very big hammer. We will use it whenever we can. But then at the same time, this erratic behavior is also very much something Trump is not happy with. Nobody in the region is happy with. There were so many countries, part of the Abraham Accord, others like Saudi Arabia, that were considering for a very long time, even after October 7th, to still find some normalization, some kind of ties with Israel. These actions are pushing Israel away, in a way also not to mention in the West, Israel turning into a pariah. This is something Trump is noticing, and he's trying to put distance in the sense that he wants to see Hamas gone. There's many who wants to see Hamas. This is a terror organization. They did horrible things, not just to Israelis, but of course, and Americans, and also actions around the world. So people want to see Hamas gone. Leaders want to see Hamas gone, but they don't want to see Israel losing control completely and being, allowing itself to go basically so audaciously against everybody, every goal everywhere around the world. This is not bringing stability.
Let's pick up that point with Hans-Jakob. Hans-Jakob, is this Israel going rogue, ignoring the advice of its friends and enemies, and just doing its own thing, and it doesn't care now?
Look, I mean, the declared goal is to really cut Hamas down to its minimum size and make sure that it's no longer going to be in the future a terrorism threat against Israel. Now, there are several ways in order you can achieve that. I'm always of the opinion that as long as you don't go deliberately and systematically after the money of Hamas, you can cut Hamas militarily down in the Gaza Strip, but it will remain, because of financial assets, an ongoing terrorist concern in Israel and beyond. And let's not forget, there was a prevented Hamas terror attack in Berlin at the end of 2023. Organized by Hamas operatives. So, this is a very serious terror organization who could have released hostages, could ended that conflict quite a while ago. So it's not just Israel who walked away sometimes from negotiations. Equally, Hamas has walked away. And I assume this new really serious escalation by attacking the Hamas political leadership in Qatar really is meant as a signal that to the terror organization, with all the associated costs politically and diplomatically, including some very interesting statement by the White House this evening, that they mean business and that the end phase of this fight against Hamas has arrived, and no one of the Hamas leadership should feel safe anywhere in the world. Nevertheless, it is an attack on a sovereign country.
We'll leave it there. Thank you so much for your fascinating analyses. That's Hans-Jakob Schindler from the Counter-Extremism Project and DW's Middle East analyst, Shani Rozanes. Thank you both.